All right, everybody, we are live. Welcome to this week's edition of Fights Unwrapped. Joining me today is my co-host Alec Carr. We're hoping that Dustin Hunt joins in a little bit later once he's done with his work stuff. So, anyways, we have a card to talk about this week. It's UFC 287 Adesanya versus Pereira 2, and also an interesting headline that transpired not even 24 hours ago. So we will touch on that in just a little bit. But before we touch on our headlines and talk about the main card for this pay-per-view, we have to talk about our sponsors real quick. And doing so, I'm going to leave it to Mr. Alec Carr to talk about our sponsors in just a few moments while I bring it up right here. Okay, Alec Carr, do your thing.
All right, guys. I'm just gonna continue to say this. If you're getting older, but you still want to pretend like you're in your 20s, like I do, you're gonna want to check out rxhemp.com. They have amazing products, CBD ointments, creams, icy hot butt with CBD in it. That's the only way I know how to explain it. This stuff is absolutely great for recovery. I love it. I order it like once every other month. I couldn't work out without it. So, guys, check out rxhemp.com today and make sure you use promo code rxhemp-usn to get 10% off your entire order. And then I won't be, but I'm sure Monique has already placed some bets for this weekend. Coming up, we got the big trilogy fight of Alex Pereira versus. Oh no, this is their fourth fight, right? They fought twice, and then the third time was in the UFC. Yeah, this is their fourth fight. So we got Alex Pereira versus Adesanya, which we will talk about later. You got a whole bunch of fights. You got Burns versus Masvidal. You got a lot going on this weekend. So make sure you're visiting mybookie.ag today and use promo code USN100 for a 100% sign up bonus.
All right, thank you, Alec Carr. So I think everybody who is at least, pretty present in the MMA community would know what our headline would be this week, the major headline, which is one of our only headlines. We're going to talk about the whole Endeavor buying the WWE, purchasing the WWE, and putting that under their umbrella on top of UFC and creating a new kind of combat sports company that is publicly traded. So we're going to talk about that. And with Alec Carr, you have the business mindset in this podcast. So why don't you kind of give everybody who doesn't know about this headline some context, just briefly, and then we'll start talking about it.
Yeah, so first of all, there's a lot of confusion. It's been cleared up a little bit today since we're going on 24 hours. A lot more information has come out, but there is still a lot of confusion out there going on about this purchase for Endeavor. First of all, I got to give them a round of applause. It's a great idea. It's going to be a lot of work for them, but it is a great idea to make this purchase. So just so everybody knows what's happening, the UFC did not purchase the WWE first and foremost. That is not what happened. The UFC is owned by a parent company called Endeavor, which is a publicly traded company that owns all kinds of different things. I don't know if you actually know this, Monique, but I do because it's in the line of work that I get actually paid for. So there's this big licensure company called IMG. IMG owns the licenses to pretty much anything you can think of. Endeavor owns IMG, so they got their hands in a lot of different things. This is what Endeavor did was they purchased the WWE for I think around it hasn't been fully disclosed yet, but I think it was for around $9 billion. And now what they are doing, I know there's a lot of people are throwing around the word merger a lot. And yes, it is technically a merger, but it's not a merger in the true sense of the word, because what's happening is it's a merger under a new company that is yet to be created. So these are when we hear the term merger in a business sense, what we're usually thinking is two companies becoming one, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is not what is happening. It's the Endeavor is creating a subsidiary, an unnamed company that will also be publicly traded, and they're putting the WWE here and the UFC here. Now, what this will allow Endeavor to do is essentially I don't want to use the term cross promotion because you're not going to see a lot of mashups, but what you will see is co-marketing. What you will see is you might see a lot of UFC fighters making appearances at WWE. You might see some WWE fighters making appearances in the UFC. But this is a really interesting idea by Endeavor, one that kind of shocked the world, because last we heard, Vince McMahon was retiring, and apparently The Rock was trying to get a group together to purchase WWE from Vince McMahon. Then Vince McMahon suddenly came back, and then a month later, this is what's happening. So Vince McMahon is staying on as of right now as this. I think he'll be either the president or CEO of the new company, and he'll remain on as the president of the WWE. Kind of like how Dana White remained on with the UFC, is now the president of the UFC. He does not have ownership. So a lot to unpack here. But before I keep going on this, Monique, let me throw it back to you. What do you think about all of this? Like, do you think this is a good idea? Do you think this is a bad idea? Do you think it doesn't mean anything? Do you think that the WWE is just gonna continue to do the same thing they're doing, and the UFC will continue to do anyway? What are your feelings about this?
Yeah, I guess before I kind of share my feelings, I was just reading the article briefly because, you know, there's a lot of information that's missing, besides the announcement that the parent company Endeavor has bought the UFC and the WWE, and they're creating this new company with both of them kind of their own separate entities at this point, with Dana White staying on as president and Vince McMahon staying on as CEO of the WWE. Now, it does say in this article that the new company will be overseen by Ari Emanuel, who is the CEO at Endeavor. They will have 51% controlling interest of the new company, and the WWE shareholders, the current ones, will control the other 49%. So the actual deal, when it comes to both companies going together, is about 21.4 billion.
So I just want to jump right in here. I didn't want to get into all that detail, but I'm glad you did, because that's the merger right there. Not the WWE and the UFC, the merger of the new company that Ari is going to be running and the WWE. That's the merger right there, the 51-49. That's what we're talking. That's when people use the term merger. I can't stress it enough. It's not a merger between the UFC and WWE. It's a merger between this new company and the WWE that the UFC is also going to fall under.
Yeah, that was kind of confusing on my part, because for my understanding, I originally thought that it was the WWE and the UFC kind of creating this company, but they're both like separate entities. So it was kind of confusing. So I'm glad you brought that up, Alikar. You kind of cleared up my confusion, because as I was reading this, I'm like, oh, that makes no sense. If 49%, goes to the shareholders of the WWE, if it's a UFC and a WWE merger, but it's not. So this new company is pretty much like Endeavor plus WWE, and they're creating this like new combat sports company, whatever it may be. We don't really know much of the details at this point, except that. But basically, how I think about all of this, I don't know how I feel about WWE stars kind of making appearances at UFC events, as well as I don't really know how I feel about UFC stars making appearances at WWE events. I just think that I like both those companies separate. I don't really care so much about, not cross promotion. I guess, like you said, it's not the right word for it, but these special appearances made by these fighters or wrestlers, you may call it. I just think that it might water down the whole UFC company in terms of the aspect of, we're trying to, as hardcore fans, we like the fact that they keep it real. These are either real beefs, nothing scripted for the most part. Obviously, there's a little bit of that in there in terms of different fighters and the images they want to portray to the public and their fans. But I think that I like the fact that the UFC generally is, the real deal. It's real mixed martial artists, fighters that have been training for years and years and years for some, fighting in an octagon. Whereas the WWE, in my opinion, is just kind of like, very scripted, and like 99% of it is probably scripted, and a lot of it is, planned out scenes, planned out results, that kind of thing, right? So I don't know how I feel about it right now. I just hope that
So,
it just kind of like stays two separate entities of just yeah.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. I mean, the Endeavor's trying in their statement is trying to make the WWE seem like this company that's massively growing, and it is actually it is growing in a way. So businesses are really complicated, especially ones that are as big as the WWE. So yeah, they can shift their numbers around to be like, look, growth. even though if you talk to any of the WWE fans, I mean, I have some friends who are pretty hardcore who say it's a great era for WWE, but their viewership is dropping significantly. Their PPVs are averaging around 25,000, which is not good.
No.
Not good at all. So the Endeavor, or this new company, whatever we want to call it, which I'll keep calling Endeavor until it has an actual name, they got a lot of work to do, and they got to be really careful. This could be really, 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 really cool, but it's going to be a dangerous line, and there's probably going to be a lot of mistakes made at first. But what could be really cool about it is, right now the UFC has no real retirement package, so you're headlining UFC athletes when they're retiring can transition easily to the WWE. I think that's pretty cool. You might see some commentators from the hopefully might see some commentators from the WWE transition over to the UFC, because we all know, everybody knows the UFC needs some help in the booth. And you might see vice versa. It would be interesting to see DC commentate a WWE fight. So those are the kinds of things that would be really fun, and I really hope they do this slow when they start doing it. Like things like you got DC in the WWE booth, like those small things, or maybe you got Conor McGregor out in the ring just to introduce some fighters just for fun, like something that's fun and exciting and can get the fans excited about this new business venture that's happening. But it could be, before we really get into the mistakes that could happen, I really want to talk about how big of an opportunity this is for the WWE and why this was such a clean purchase. Because usually when this happens, especially with somebody like Vince McMahon, who's quite literally built the WWE up from nothing. I mean that's his baby. Usually those guys don't sell. They die at their desk. That's usually what happens. And this went by with no problems. There's no leaks, no nothing. So, and I think the reason for that is the WWE, in order to grow, needs a more international presence. I know they get a lot of international views, but they don't do a lot of international shows. The UFC, what they probably see the UFC as is like a distributor almost, because the UFC has these relationships in different countries, and the UFC's massively expanding their international relations. So I think the WWE saw that as the opportunity it was. There needs to be a WWE event in Abu Dhabi. If I'm them, I'm making that immediately. The UFC is talking about making an event in Africa. I would back that up immediately with the WWE event. So it's that aspect of it is why this happened. I think is ultimately why this happened.
My question to you then, Alec, is like, why haven't they thought of this before? Is it you think they don't have the funds to kind of grow internationally? Because they, I know a lot of fans internationally that know of the WWE, that know John Cena, that know Triple H, Batista, Undertaker. The list goes on with wrestlers, right, all around the world. So why haven't they tried, kind of expanding internationally, and why do this now? I guess now they have the resources to do them, right?
I think it's a good question. It's something they used to do a long time ago. I think what happened was the market in the United States was huge, and they didn't need to do it.
Okay.
Then when they saw, viewership starting to slip, PPV numbers going down, their price has actually gone down and not up, which is never a good sign. So like when that stuff started happening and they needed to start doing international shows, I just think they deemed it as unimportant. And then what they did was, and it was smart, Vince McMahon, for the fucking shit that he always gets. He's a borderline genius businessman. I mean, he ventured in, that he expanded, he blew up the WWE in the past 5 years. Now they have all these different like little promotions out there that's really entertaining for the hardcore fans. The issue is the international people know about it and they watch it, but they don't have live events there. And we all know what a difference it makes to have, you can say WWE is not a combat sport, but that's what I'm going to call it. I have a lot of respect for the WWE athletes because I know it's scripted, but people get fucked up in that ring. So there is a level of respect there, but I just think this is an easy way for them to do it. This is the easiest way for them to do it. Otherwise, they'd be putting out a shit ton of money in order to do it themselves, and it seemed like, again, I can't say this enough. This was the perfect time for Endeavor to make this purchase. Prices are going down for the WWE. The shareholders are not happy with the WWE and the direction it's going in. So Endeavor they've had relationships with the WWE for a long, long time. Dana White and Vince McMahon are very close friends. So I think it was just, this is where an opportunity presented itself, and Endeavor was already there. So I think that's what happened here. But I again, Endeavor, or the new company that Endeavor is going to create, has a lot of work ahead of them in order to make this happen and to make it happen the right way. It will be, I'm really excited because I think it will be really cool to have, UFC goes to Africa, WWE goes to Africa. Yeah. UFC goes to France, WWE goes to France. Like, it would be really cool to back those up to each other. Or even UFC's in Africa on Saturday, WWE's in Africa on Sunday. Like, that would be a lot of fun. So, that might make me actually watch the WWE again, just because that would be really cool. Because all the stars will be there. And that's the other thing. The WWE, if you watch it now, they used to be able to pan to the crowd and see the movie stars, the country rock stars, and all that. Like, now when you pan to the WWE, like, stadium, you don't get that. But you do with the UFC. Mark Wahlberg is a regular attendee at UFC events. Also a very close friend with Dana White. You got The Rock, who goes to a lot of UFC events. You got all these huge names. You got Miles Teller's going to UFC events. All these guys all these stars, A-list stars, are going to UFC events. So if you have a WWE event right after or right before, those stars are already there. And you need to capture that star power and bring it back in. Because that's what made the WWE fun, is having these celebrities on there, and they would fight and do all this other crazy stuff. But now the WWE's been forced to just kind of recycle old athletes because it's cheaper. Yeah. So anyway, I could talk about this business venture for a long time, but it could be really, really cool if they do it the right way. But they have to do it the right way, because there is a way where they fuck this up
Mhm.
And now not only is the WWE struggling, but the UFC is struggling too. And Bellator and PFL and One Championship are knocking at the door, waiting for that day to happen. So they have to be extremely careful to not allow for opportunity of another MMA promotion to come in and start taking away fighters. And that's what I'm afraid of. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully, this also helps fighter pay, because these guys are getting paid a lot more money, and the company itself is already worth $21 billion. So we'll see what happens with as far as that goes as well. But sorry, one more thing. One
Yeah.
more thing. I
Yeah,
almost
no worries. Go
forgot
ahead.
the whole
Yeah.
point of why I wanted to talk about this so bad is where Endeavor or this new company is going. Unnamed. Let's call it unnamed company that has WWE and UFC under it. Because that's the most exciting part about this is I think this is the first purchase of many. I think that this new unnamed company is going to be purchasing other combat promotions, other combat sport promotions. I think they'll be purchasing um, some boxing and some boxing ventures, some other MMA ventures. Don't be surprised if you see some old MMA ventures promotions come back because that would be really cool. So there's a lot going to happen here. And Endeavor has kind of already made it known that they want MMA to be operated like the NFL. They've been very vocal about that. They've shown it in the way they've been managing their business. And this is another sign of that happening. Don't be surprised in the next, I've said it a million times to anybody who will listen. Don't be surprised in the next 10 years if One Championship, Bellator, or PFL, if not all of them, at least one of them is gone because this new company has made a purchase and bought them out. I think they're going to go after One Championship first to capture that Asian market, because the UFC has already expressed lots of interest in that Asian market. So I think that this is a way to build capital in order to make that happen. So that would be really cool to have a combat sports company that owns just a bunch of promotions. So we'll see what happens, but it's a really exciting future for the sport that we love.
Yeah, no, speaking of One Championship, I don't know if you know this, Alikar, but there was a, how do I say this? Like a disclosed fighter pay, and it was atrocious. It was like what, 1,300 or something for one fight, and it was just from One Championship, and everybody on Twitter just kind of went nuts at it, and so I can see them, capitalizing on things like fighter pay, and really making a statement with hopefully better fighter pay for the UFC, and I guess WWE as well, but mostly for the UFC I'm talking about in terms of like MMA promotions and things like that. So, what would your, if you were to run Endeavor and you were to run this unnamed company, like what would the first thing you would do in terms of like, running this company the right way and the proper way to ensure success, and what are the things are you going to try to prevent or avoid to make sure you don't run into any mistakes?
That's a really good question. The first thing I would do is bring over some commentators.
Yeah.
WWE has really exciting commentators. I can't think of any right now off the top of my head, but they have some very exciting commentators that could come in and really help out. And I think that's, again, like I said before, I think that's really the first thing you try to do is, introduce these two companies, have DC go over. And I keep saying DC because he would be the most entertaining to see at a WWE event behind the booth, because we all know I don't like him, but he is very much, he can put on that WWE face very good. So it will be cool to see. The mistakes that they could made is obvious. Make the first one, and obviously the worst one is having too many WWE guys fight in the UFC. They
Yeah.
need to stay away from that shit. It's never worked except for if you want to count Brock Lesnar. He's more the, you know, exception to the rule rather than the rule. Also, Brock Lesnar fought in the easiest the heavyweight division has ever been. And as soon as it got good again, he got his ass kicked. So,
Yeah.
Now Brock Lesnar was a good fighter. He's also one of the one of the best wrestlers in the world in his prime. So not WWE, actual wrestling. He was a monster.
Mhm.
So that's a little different. So that's the big thing. That's the one thing that UFC fans and MMA fans do not want to see. They don't want to see a ton of guys coming over and saying I could fight in the UFC. No, they need to scratch that unless it's a realistic person that could actually do it, like Brock Lesnar. Don't just be throwing in these guys for no reason. If you start having too many, like the one thing I would hate to see is seeing the WWE wrestlers interview the fighters. I don't want to see that shit. Like WWE wrestlers don't know what UFC fighters go through. The training camps are not the same thing. I don't want to see that pageantry bullshit that goes on with some of that with some of that stuff. They can't. The biggest thing that they need to avoid is they need to have them together, but also separated, if that makes sense. Because they just can't allow the UFC and the WWE to get too close where lines start blurring, because you already have a small section of fans, right, who claim the UFC is scripted, that it's not real, that these guys aren't actually fighting. And the worst thing that could happen is that small subsect of people starts mushrooming into this big group of people. That would just be a shame. So, but bringing in, like, it would be cool to bring in guys like John Cena to like be in the booth. John Cena is also a wrestler and knows what he's talking about. Bringing in those guys that actually like are fun and know what they're talking about and could actually do something, not to fight, but to like just show them even there on like Octagon side. That would be a lot of fun. Vice versa, have Conor McGregor go to the WWE, have him walk out with somebody, have him fucking do all kinds of crazy stuff. And then again, I can't stress this enough, it would be really cool to start seeing retired fighters transition to the WWE. I think that would be a lot of fun. I would love to see DC in the WWE. I really, really would. Actually, in the ring, I think it would be really funny. But I think that would bring people back to the WWE. Is having some of these retired fighters. Like, could you imagine if like, God, who am I thinking of right now? If Izzy, after he retired in the next 5 years, went to the WWE just for like a little bit, it would be so fun. It would be so much fun to watch. So those are the things that get me excited. But again, they have to be careful with this. They have to be careful.
So, like, when it comes to the commentator side of it, where you said, like, what if you bring more commentators or WWE commentators to the UFC side? I don't know if fans, like hardcore fans, would appreciate that as much, because, like, I'm not saying that the WWE commentators don't know what they're talking about. It's just that, it's a different kind of caliber. It's mixed martial arts. It's not just, pro wrestling, right? And I understand that pro wrestling has, some mixture of different combat sports in there as well. It's just that I feel like with bringing in those kind of commentators in the UFC, they really have to know their stuff. They really have to study the mixed martial arts kind of caliber and like watch either tape or just kind of
I know what
yeah.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I think that would worry people, and I think there would be a lot of resistance at first.
Yeah.
But I think after they saw, because what WWE commentators are true professionals. That's what they are.
Yeah.
So So it wouldn't be like Stephen A. Smith being put out to talk about fucking MMA. It's not the same thing.
Yeah.
These are actual professional combat sport commentators that have a extensive background in research. These are some of the WWE commentating jobs are some of the hardest jobs to get in commentating because of the level of expectation behind you. You have to be perfect. You have to be on at all times, and you have to be ready for when there's mistakes in the script because it happens all the time. So these guys are true professionals, and like they got Kevin Patrick, they got what's his name, Cole, like, and some of these guys, if you look it up, do actually have some background in MMA. Not extensive, but they actually do have some background. I think it would be great to do. Listen, I know people are going to kill me for even saying that or suggesting that, but I think it's a really good idea. I think it's also to have a guest commentator would be of like a John Cena who comes on not for the whole fucking fight or the whole card, but comes on during the prelims for about 20 minutes and they just talk to him because what the UFC is really trying to do now to expand their viewership is engage the community in the prelims more. So you want to engage the community in the prelims more. Get somebody out there to talk about UFC that never gets to talk about it, like a John Cena, like I can't even think about any of the current fighters, but you get some of those guys like Stone Cold. Get Stone Cold out there in the prelims to start talking about and it's the prelims. There's not that many people watching, so who really cares that much? So that could be a way you do it. There's a way to do cross promotion with commentating that's never been done before in the UFC that would be fantastic for them. It doesn't have to be for full fights. It can be, like I said, for just segments of downtime, maybe in between prelims and the main card. You bring out a former WWE star like The Rock, who's made appearances in the UFC before, giving out the BMF belt, doing all kinds of stuff. He's walked out with fighters in the past. He's done a lot with the UFC already. Have him on for 10 minutes. Have him on in the prelims for 10 minutes. Like those are the things that could help, little things that would be big in help growing the two businesses. Listen, there's, like I said, it's a line. There's a line you cannot cross. You don't want Kevin Patrick coming on and doing a full fight. I get that. But to have him come on as a guest commentator in the prelims, I'm watching because it's going to be super exciting with Kevin Patrick or Cole screaming at the top of their lungs. Like, that's something the UFC is missing right now. You get a lot of comments about DC, Joe Rogan, Cruz, all being biased. That they back a fighter and they don't stop backing that fighter, and if that fighter loses, it's because of the mistakes that fighter made, not because the other fighter did. So the UFC needs to find ways and to fix the commentating in order to grow viewership. And what they could do is use the same pool that the WWE uses for talent. That's something they could just do and say, that guy was applying to the WWE, but let's see what he can do in the UFC as a commentator or an analyst or something. So
yeah, okay.
There's a lot we could talk about. We could do a whole stream on this but it is it's something I'm sure we'll continue to talk about because there is not a lot of information out right now. And you know me, Monique. I'll sit here and talk about business ventures and moves and mergers and all that stuff for hours if you let me. So we'll see what's coming down the pike. We'll see what's going to happen. It could also be much to do about nothing. It could just be that WWE is going to stay here, the UFC is going to stay here. They're just owned by this parent company now. That could be it. So we really have no idea what's going to happen here.
Yeah, I did want to bring up, I know this is kind of a little bit of a surprise, and I haven't I didn't plan on bringing this up, but we have a little bit of time before we talk about the main card. So I wanted to bring this up, and I'm not trying to down your mood, Alec Carr, but I have to talk about this. So be prepared for maybe a mini Alec rant of the week, because it's something that I just sprung on you just now. So I don't know if you know this, but a certain UFC star is making their debut as a desk analyst for UFC 287. I don't know if you know about this, and I can see from your face, I think I know where this is headed, right? But I think I have to talk about this because I know how you feel about this one fighter. And since we're talking about commentators, in the UFC, let's talk about Dustin Poirier making his UFC debut as a desk analyst. Now he'll be joined by Dean Thomas, and I think they're hosted by Michael, what's his name? Michael Eaves, during the post fight show. So he's not gonna be at the commentating booth like the rest of the commentators that you usually see, but Dustin Poirier will be at the post fight show making his desk analyst debut. So I want to get your thoughts on it, Alec. I know you're not really fond of the guy. I'm not surprised, and honestly, I don't really have much comments when it comes to this. But yes, Boxing MMA 365 made that comment. Dustin making his debut. That's surprising. I know usually more retired fighters kind of make their debut in a post-fight show. Not saying this is foreshadowing anything, but I'm gonna go to Alec. Obviously, Alec, how do you feel about this? Are you surprised? Does it make sense to you?
I mean, it's just another mistake that we were just talking about commentators and analysts and how the UFC doesn't have any good ones, and this is just another mistake of not having another good one. Just because you're a former fighter doesn't mean you're an analyst. In fact, most of the worst analysts in the entire world are former fighters or players of the sport they are now analyzing. Fighters have leaned to be super biased. They don't always know exactly what they're talking about, especially in MMA, because Dustin Poirier fights with one technique and not another. So, it's just, they gotta stop doing this. Dustin Poirier is not a likable person. He's not good. He's also terrible in front of a camera. I don't get it. I mean, maybe they're trying to do what they did with Usman, but Usman was really good at it. I wish Usman would be an analyst or in the booth, because Usman actually breaks down fights very, very well. But that's an exception. No, there's most fighters or players cannot be analysts. They just can't. I mean, you go look at every other sport in the world. You look at the best analysts in the world. Who are they? They're not former players. Almost always not former players. Maybe JJ Redick. He's a really good analyst for the NBA, but he was a student of the game he talks about it. He's been a student of the game from the time he was 3 years old. And Dustin is he's not, like I said, he's not a likable guy. He's what we call in Philadelphia hate the face. Okay. Meaning, for those of you who don't know and can't figure it out on yourself, it means as soon as I see his face, which I can see right now, I go, fuck you. Yeah. And that's what he is. And I know a lot of people still like him, but I urge all those people, whenever we talk about Dustin Poirier, I urge all those people to go in and actually do a deep dive into his charity, which with international charity rating programs has one of the lowest grades out there, because it is the opposite of transparent. He does not disclose anything from his charity, no earnings, no leadership, no nothing. He doesn't make disclosures. So if you want to keep donating to the charity where he's probably just taking your money and making fucking hot sauce with it, go ahead. But the guy's a douchebag. He doesn't follow up on half the thing he says. He's a liar. He's and I know I'm ruining the chances of ever getting Dustin Poirier on the show, but I guarantee you, if he ever listens to this, I'm begging you, Dustin, to come on and defend yourself. I like prove me wrong, because I hope I'm wrong about you. But everything that I can see from the outside proves that you don't deserve half the shit you get. Your fans are crazy. You have them believing your bullshit, and you're gonna be a terrible analyst. I like when was the last time you watched not the post fight, like immediately after the fight, but a post fight press conference and went, "Oh my God, Dustin Poirier's really got he's really got his shit together." What? I've never said that. What, Monique? Have you ever said anything like that after a post fight press conference of how Dustin broke down a fight?
No, not real. That's why boxing MMA 365 hit it on the nail. He said he's not really a talker, not a lover of doing media interviews, so that makes his debut pretty surprising. So there you go.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. He's not a talker, and when he does, he tries to talk shit to Conor McGregor, and Conor McGregor absolutely destroys him with a leg broken in half. So it's just another mistake in a long line of mistakes as far as analysts go. Is he officially? What I couldn't find was is this an ESPN move or is this a UFC move?
Yeah, I couldn't find that either when I was reading it. Yeah.
Okay, so that because it smells like an ESPN move.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I anything to do with Dustin Poirier, he can go fuck himself.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean to make you all riled up, Alec. But honestly, I thought of this and I was like, you know what, Alec would enjoy talking about this on the show. So I was like, let's just put it in there, even for 5 minutes or whatever. It's just that how I feel about it is like boxing MMA 365, and you said, Alec, like Dustin Poirier for me doesn't show much interest in becoming a commentator or a desk analyst or any type of media, performer for the UFC or for ESPN. So it kind of does surprise me and baffle me that he gets the opportunity to do so. Because like there's other fighters out there that want to do this kind of thing, that show interest in becoming an analyst or a commentator, even though they're not retired yet. And some of them, like you say, do a really good job, and some don't. So I guess we shall see how Dustin Poirier performs, under different type of bright lights than inside the octagon and in a suit. So I'm gonna be tuning in at least to see how he does. Yeah.
So we just got another comment if you want to throw it up because it's pretty funny.
No, I saw it. I wasn't sure if I wanted to throw it up, but
yeah, go ahead.
It's okay.
I will say this.
Yeah.
If he gives me that right hook, it just proves me right because he doesn't want to have a conversation about how he's defrauding everybody. So and by the way, he gives me a right hook, he can pay off all my debt. I'm down for that. like let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. I mean, yeah, Dustin Poirier is pretty active on social media, so you never know. Maybe he will see the show, and then we might actually have him on to defend himself. So, I mean, to be fair, I did have you know this, Alec. I got to interview the incredible Roxanne Modafferi, and she defended herself against the Macy Barber comments that were made, talking about her one loss only being to Alexa Grasso and nobody else, when Roxanne actually took that L from her. So, I mean, took that L on her record. So, anyways, point is being that, Dustin Poirier, if you're watching, we invite you on the show. Alec is ready. I'm definitely ready. And Dustin, our other co-host, would definitely be ready to talk to you about just everything regarding your career and other ventures with your charity and all that. But anyways, we're going to move on.
I will say this.
Yeah.
He makes damn good hot sauce.
Yeah.
He makes damn good hot sauce. It's good. It's delicious. And I'm a big hot sauce guy, so.
Okay, well there you go. Well, the one thing that Alec would defend Dustin Poirier on is his hot sauce. Well, at least he makes good hot sauce, even though Alec might not be a fan of pretty much anything else about Dustin Poirier. But anyways, someone that Alec is also not a big fan of. I feel like this is like some type of trend that's happening in the show. Things are, people that Alec Carr is not a fan of. We're gonna talk about the one person that Alec Carr loves and doesn't, but at the same time. Oh, hi, Pete. It's okay, Alec. I got you. It is Francis Ngannou and the whole bare knuckle fighting championship. Endeavor. So what happened was Francis Ngannou is like pretty much being, I guess, scouted or being looked at by different promotions right now. And when it came to bare knuckle fighting, they said, the CEO of the company said that Francis Ngannou was asking for an unrealistic amount of money. Unrealistic amount of money. And I know Alec is laughing really hard because, we called it, we called it after the UFC kind of parted ways with Francis Ngannou, like what was going to happen to him, and it's just kind of securing it. Like a lot of promotions are looking elsewhere, because he's asking for too much money. Of course, I'm sure other promotions would love to have someone like Francis Ngannou on their roster, but he's just making these unbelievably, insane kind of moves and requests, and that's what's happening right now. So Alec, let's go. Behave, okay? Alec, I know that you love talking about Francis Ngannou, and you also hate talking about Francis Ngannou. So, what do you think about this whole thing with BKFC?
I have a lot of receipts, all right, of people tearing me apart for saying that Francis Ngannou was greedy, for saying that he didn't know his worth, that he didn't know his value, and that he was led by poor management into thinking that he was worth, and this is what he actually asked for in last summer, $15 million base pay.
Mm-hmm.
The highest, as a frame of reference, the highest paid fighter right now is Israel Adesanya at $1.2 million base pay.
Mm-hmm.
So like this is just, I'm laughing because I feel a little vindicated. I feel a little validated. I feel like I'm feeling pretty good about this. Like, I just want to know what he asked BKFC for. Like, I gotta know the number. I gotta know it. Like, what was it? What was it where BKFC was like, you're off your fucking rocker, man? We don't have that kind of money. It's just, it tracks. Francis Ngannou, I'm starting to think he just doesn't want to fight. I want to know what happened with the Bellator contract. Remember a couple of weeks ago, we got news that he was getting close to signing with Bellator. What happened there? That hasn't been announced. And now we find out you also ruined a deal with BKFC. Like, if you're talking to BKFC, listen, I actually really love watching bare knuckle fighting. I do. And those athletes are fucking nut jobs, Monique. Yeah. And I don't want to, I'm not trying to discredit them. But if Francis Ngannou, right, the guy that's supposed to be the baddest man in the world, the self-proclaimed baddest man in the world, can't get a deal with BKFC, what's he gonna do? Like, what is he gonna do? So I'm starting to think he just doesn't want to fight. I think he just doesn't want to fight, which is fine. But then you can't blame others for not getting paid the amount. Like, don't come out and, like, my biggest beef, and you know this, Monique, is that Francis Ngannou really set back the argument for fair fighter pay. He really set it back by using it as a negotiating chip to get declined a contract. So he really set back the actual warriors, which we consider ourselves, of fighter pay, and some of the actual fighters like Sugar Sean O'Malley, Piotr Yan, like some of these guys who were very vocal about it. Francis Ngannou set that back years by using this as a negotiating chip to get out of his contract. And for those of you who want to trash me for saying that, and say, well, you don't think fighters? No, fighters deserve a shit ton more money, even Francis Ngannou. But the fact of the matter is, you don't bring that up in personal contract negotiations. You don't ask the promotion you fight for to gift wrap you more sponsorships. Go out and get them like the other guys are. Go out and get them like Peyton Manning has to for his shit. Like it was clear that he brought that up to get out. And he's even said probably 20 times I can think of that he got exactly what he wanted.
Yeah.
So we know who Francis Ngannou is at this point. He thinks he's worth millions of dollars. He doesn't want to put in any effort. He doesn't want to market. He doesn't want to do any of these other things that would actually force companies to pay him more money. He just wants somebody to come over and hand it to him. And dude, I get it. I want $20 million too. That would be fucking great. but that's just not the world we live in. And you know, I would say Francis Ngannou right now in the market, right? In the market, not what I think he deserves. In the market of MMA, I think he's probably worth let's see, Izzy's 1.2 to show, 1.2 to win. Masvidal right now is at like I think $800,000.
Mm-hmm.
So I would probably say he's probably $950.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah,
I think that's a good value for him. And the UFC also offered him a 3-fight deal worth over $8 million, and he turned it down. So I just, you know, we know who he is. This is just more proof of like we know exactly who he is. He's not the guy we thought he was. He's not the baddest man on the planet. He's just doesn't want to fight. He just doesn't want to fight. That's what I think.
I mean, like, you should thank Mr. David Feldman, who is the BKFC president, for kind of exposing that, at least publicly. I mean, you already knew that, Alec, kind of going into, you know, this whole show and talking about Francis Ngannou, but, you know, David Feldman was the one, you know, from BKFC that pretty much kind of put it out there in plain writing that he was just asking for an unrealistic amount of money. And so how I feel about this, just briefly, is just that I agree with you, Alec. I think that Francis Ngannou, you know, I think it's just like his own kind of, I don't think this has to do with much management as it does with just like the person himself, and he doesn't want to do any of the work, and he wants people to just give him this much money, give him all the sponsorship. Like, it doesn't work that way, man. You gotta put in some effort, like as many things in life you have to do in order to get. So anyways, point is, we can talk about Francis Ngannou for the rest of the
show. One more comment.
Yeah.
I just want to make, because the whole sponsorship thing that he wanted the UFC to give him. Paddy the Baddy went out and got his own sponsorships. Conor McGregor went out and got his own sponsorships. He actually created companies that now sponsor the UFC. Like, Jorge Masvidal got his own sponsorships. Colby Covington went out and got his own sponsorships. Leon Edwards, like, I could name a million names. Sean O'Malley, Petr Yan, all these people went out and got their own sponsorships. The UFC doesn't decline sponsorships. They just don't let you wear it on your shorts or talk about it in the fight. You can still be sponsored by whoever the hell you want to be sponsored by. You just can't bring it up. And the UFC's not going to pay you more for that sponsorship. Of course they're not, because they're trying to be a fight league, not a promotion, not Bellator, not One, not these little meddling promotions that are still just hanging around. They're trying to be a league. And in order to do that, everything has to be uniform. It has to look the same. You get a certain number of guaranteed sponsorships. Anything else you want, you got to go get. That's how the NBA works. It's how the MLB works. It's how the NFL works. It's how MLS works. It's how Premier League works. It's how the Spanish Football League works. It's how the Italian Football League works. It's how every fucking sport works. And the UFC gives you a certain amount of sponsorships. They give you Prime. They give you the stupid Rock shoes. They give you Venom. Like they give you a bunch of stuff. Yes, it's not enough. I'm the first person to say that it's not enough. But they are giving you things, and for you to kind of in your own contract say, I want the UFC to give me more sponsorships. I'm sure the UFC the representatives looked at them and be like, you have all the sponsorships available, man. What do you want us to do? Go sign another multi-$100 million sponsorship deal just so we can hand you a little bit of extra money? That's not how that works. It's just not how it works.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's a great point, like, Boxing MMA 365 mentioned about you making that point, Alex, so good on you for doing that. But finally, guys, we talked about our headlines, and I'm sorry, Alec, again, for bringing up the whole Dustin Poirier one, but I honestly knew that you were just going to eat it up, and you did, and that's what I wanted for the show. But anyways, we are going to talk about UFC 287 because we do have a stacked main card. Now the prelims were looking pretty good too, but we had two fights, unfortunately, they got pulled out of the card. One of them was Chris Barnett, which I was looking forward to against Chase Sherman. And the other one, I believe, was Michael Chiesa versus Bleach. So that was just kind of disappointing. Michael Chiesa is looking to I guess compete again in the near future. I wasn't sure who it was against, but it was a fighter that we all know, so I had to look that up eventually. Anyways, we're gonna start by
Chase Sherman's still fighting though.
Oh, is he actually? Okay, sorry, didn't notice that. I just know that Chris Barnett's not, and I'm very.
I mean, that's what Tapology says, and they're like 100%. So
yeah,
the two prelim callouts are we got Triple G, not Triple G. The what's his name? Gerald Meerschaert.
GM3.
GM3, thank you. Versus Joseph Pyfer, who's a great young middleweight. So that's one to watch out for. And then Carl Williams is making a quick turnaround from March 11th to fight Chase Sherman. For those of you who don't know, Carl Williams was on the last PPV prelim, and he just took the fighter he fought for a fucking ride. So make sure you guys are watching that.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the girl fights that's on it is also one of my ones to look out for, which is...
You're talking about the first one, Sam Hughes versus Jacqueline?
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking.
Amari? Yeah, the young Brazilian. Yeah, that's a good one to watch as well.
Yeah, and I also wanted to mention Michelle Waterson Gomez versus Pinheiro was also one to watch out for because Gomez wants to get back into the win column. So that'd be really interesting to see what she does.
I'm excited to see what she does, but I also, and this is hard for me to say because you know that, but our viewers don't. My fiance actually knows Michelle Waterson. She was in Colorado. They trained at the same gym for a little bit. I just want her to stay retired. She was so much fun to watch.
Yeah.
I hope she wins. I'm rooting. Michelle Waterson, I am rooting. Michelle Waterson Gomez, I am rooting for you to win. But I'm also very worried.
Well, I mean, like, I'm just saying, Alec, if you have that connection with your fiance and her, I'm just saying, if she wins this fight, she's always welcome to be on the show.
I've maybe already barked up that tree.
Okay, no worries. Just putting it out there. Anyways, we're gonna start with the first fight, which is a really interesting one with Raul Rosas Jr. versus Rodriguez. So that is the first match that is happening, and it's happening at bantamweight. So, Alec, this should be an easy one. I don't know if we're gonna be on the same page because usually Dustin is the one that makes like the funny moves, between all three of us. When I feel like with you, I can read mostly where you're headed with these fights, but with Dustin, I can't read at all. Like, he just has this poker face, and then I can't read which fighter he's gonna pick. So, who do you think's gonna win this bantamweight matchup?
It's Rosas.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Roses. This is another setup fight for the youngest UFC pro fighter of all time. I'm excited for it. I listen. Give this guy as many cake fights as he can. They're already talking about him jumping up in weight class, and he's a fun. He's like he's a lot of fun to watch. You know, Bo Nickel is a really good young fighter too, but Bo Nickel can be a really boring fighter. Rosas is a lot of fun to watch. He's exciting. He can strike. He can wrestle. He's got good BJJ. But he also talks shit. Like I listen. I think he wins this fight. I think he wins it quickly. It could either be TKO, KO, or submission. I think he's looking for KO though, because he hasn't had one in the UFC yet. So therefore, he needs to get one. So yeah, I got Rosas 100% winning this fight.
Yeah, the only thing I struggle with when it comes to Rosas is that, like, the whole fact of the fact that he's going to be under the bright lights and the pressure from the crowd and the pressure from his family and friends, like that kind of pressure on a fighter, especially a young fighter like an 18-year-old, you know, one of the youngest, if not the youngest in the UFC right now, could be, you know, somewhat debilitating for his performance. So, like, how do you feel about that? Do you think it's going to affect him so much, or do you think, like, this kid's ready for the spotlight?
Well, he's technically been fighting pro since he was like 16 years old. So he's never been in the UFC bright lights, but he's been on I don't want to say a big stage, but a big stage for a 16-year-old to be on. So I mean, it is something to worry about. I'm not going to downplay it, but he is. There's a reason why they're doing this. The kid is incredible. He was a prodigy. Like he's like the direct result of the UFC's popular growth, populist growth. Like the direct result of he's been training since he's 3 years old. Like, so I'm actually excited because I think we're going to get more and more young fighters. I think he's just the first of many. Now, we're not going to get people signing when they're 17 all the time, like he did. He wasn't even 18 yet. So that's not going to happen. But it is exciting because I think we're going to see a lot more younger talent coming in because they're starting younger. And especially for international fighters who can fight pro before they are 18, just like in basketball. You see, we've seen so many international basketball players in the NBA come over to the point where the four best players in the NBA are all international, right? Yeah. I know it's up for debate, but most of the top, let's say 3 out of the top 5 are all international players. And that's because they start playing. A lot of them can start, like, Luka's been playing pro since he was 16 years old. So the same thing's going to start happening with the UFC, and that's got me super pumped. The U.S., what doesn't have me pumped is the U.S. fighters are really going to fall behind.
Yeah, for sure. I can see that happening. Okay, let's move on to the next fight, which is happening at welterweight. Okay, we have Kevin Holland versus Santiago Ponzinibbio. Okay, so I'm going to go to Alec first before I share my thoughts because I have this kind of weird theory that I want to happen, like a fantasy of mine happening in this matchup. But so
you want Ponzinibbio to win, don't you?
No, that's not my fantasy, and that's not where I'm not going like Baywatch on this. This is like an actual like MMA kind of fantasy.
Okay, I want Ponzinibbio to win. I loved him before his injuries. The guy looked like he was going to be one of the best fighters in the UFC. And he's also so entertaining. But I got Kevin Holland winning this fight.
How do you think he's going to win this fight?
So I think because Ponzinibbio has a bad history of going to decision, which is really bad to do against Kevin Holland because he will knock you out. Though I could see this ending a lot like let me pull up Kevin Holland real quick. A lot like the Tim Means fight where he rocks Ponzinibbio, because Ponzinibbio is really hard to knock out, even though he's a shell of himself. He's still really hard to knock out. So I could see this ending with him rocking Ponzinibbio and ending in a submission. I really could, because, you know, we all like to crush Kevin Holland for not having any ground game. He's still a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and knows how to tap people out, and he's done it. So I think we could possibly see that, or more likely some ground and pound in probably the second or third round to end the fight.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I want to happen, Alikar. I was aiming for the whole. I want Kevin Holland to show off his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, because you know me, I do grappling myself, and so why wouldn't I want to see a Kevin Holland sub? And I would, obviously, a knockout would probably be more, I guess, realistic in a situation like this, because obviously he hasn't really used much of his BJJ skills on display in most of his fights. Some of his fights, sure, but I would love to see him kind of use that arsenal, that weapon more, you know, in this fight, especially against someone like Ponzinibbio, which you don't want to continue standing with. You know, he's just going to give you a challenge, right? So that's what I think. That's my fantasy. I would love to see Kevin Holland get a really cool sub. Anyways, that was where I was going with this, Alikar. Just to let you know. So we are gonna move on to the next fight, and they just keep getting better and better in this main card. Oh my gosh! So this fight, I've been looking forward to for God knows how many months when it was announced, and I'm not gonna be biased here. I'm gonna try to keep my biases aside, because it's really hard for me to choose between these two fighters. I mean, Rob Font versus Adrian Yanez. Rob Font I've always kind of loved because of his incredible boxing skills. But Adrian Yanez, like, he just come on to his own, you know? And that's one of the reasons why I'm going to pick him to win, just because I think he's the more well-rounded fighter in this fight. Now, Rob Font has the experience, obviously has the resume, you know, he hasn't done the greatest the last few bouts, but you know, he is incredible. He's tough, and it'd be very hard to kind of put him out in this fight. But I have Adrian Yanez winning. Alikar, what do you think about this fight?
I think ultimately I agree with you. I think Adrian Yanez is the much more well-rounded fighter. The one thing that worries me about this fight, because I love Adrian, I love Adrian Yanez. I think he's an incredibly talented fighter. Going up against a guy like Rob Font is incredibly dangerous for a young, talented fighter.
Yes.
Rob Font, I know, hasn't looked great in his last two fights, but that's not actually entirely true. Against Chito Vera, he looked fantastic. It's just Chito Vera, every time he hit him, did damage and fucked him up. But the Rob Font looked real clean, like crisp and clean. He looked like the same Rob Font he's always been. So that, like, and this is a huge, Monique, huge step up in talent for Yanez.
Yeah.
Like, massive leap in talent. Rob Font is an incredible fighter. It's so funny when people bring up the best boxers in the MMA. In MMA, no one mentions Rob Font. It's like,
I know.
what are you guys watching?
I know. Yeah.
I know he's a point fighter, but like, still. So I think this is a really dangerous fight. I could see this going all the way to decision, because I think Rob Font's going to cause a lot of problems for Adrian, and Adrian's going to be forced to shoot a lot. So because he's never fought Tony Kelly's not Rob Font. Yeah, Rob Font will put together a three-piece that you didn't even see and are all of a sudden like, why does my face hurt? So this is a dangerous fight. It's an exciting fight. But I think Adrian Yanez can get this done. You know, we all know the blueprint to beating Font is get him against the cage or get him on the ground. If you can do that, those are very difficult to do because he's very good at defending against takedowns and getting away from the cage and keeping the fight in the center of the octagon. But I think Adrian Yanez is good enough. I think he brings that pressure. We saw it against Tony Kelly. We saw it against Randy Costa. We've saw it over and over and over again from him. I think he can bring that pressure. He's also bigger than Rob Font. Rob Font's very, very small. So I do think he can get it done. Though don't be surprised if Rob Font's he's getting his hand held up at the end of this fight.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, like, obviously, like I said, I'm trying to keep the biases aside. Freaking Adrian Yanez retweeted my whole spiel about pretty much getting hyped for this fight and getting him, getting his hand raised. I pretty much predicted that in one of my previous shows with my buddy Cell. If you want to watch that, it's the SM show on YouTube if you want to catch that, guys. We broke down UFC 287 pretty early, but I was just so hyped, Alec Carr, like talking about this fight, and Adrian Yanez retweeted this post of mine, and I just kind of lost it from there. So it has nothing to do with me choosing him. This is obviously after the fact that I already made that prediction, right? But anyways, point is
he's gotta bring that pressure the entire fight. If he as far as backs up like once, Rob Font is gonna capitalize that. If he puts that weight on that back foot, Rob Font's gonna hit him. And he's going to hit him with a lot of punches. So, pressure, Yanez. Pressure.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll figure that out in his training camp for sure. So, no problems with that. All right, moving on to the next welterweight bout. We have Gilbert Durinho Burns versus Jorge Gamebred Masvidal. So, okay. Alec Carr, I'm going to go to you first because it's Masvidal. So... this is like a pretty obvious reason for me to literally talk to you first about this fight. Give me your thoughts. Who do you think's gonna win? Like, I don't already know what you're gonna say.
I know Burns is gonna win. I know Burns is gonna win. There's no thinking here. Jorge Masvidal is and I've said it a million times. I feel like Stephen A. Smith or like Skip Bayless right now, Monique, because you know how they go, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Like that's what I feel like I am right now, because I've said it a million times about Jorge Masvidal, and I'll say it a million more. He is the definition of mid.
Mm-hmm.
His entire career. Go look at his career. If you don't know it, go look at his career. He's been fighting forever. It's an extensive career. He's always good, but not good enough to beat the rest. That's his career. That's it. Joe Rogan said this whole version of Jorge Masvidal could have beaten prime GSP. Joe Rogan, just stop it with the mushrooms, man. Like, just take a couple months off. Like, please just take a couple months off. Jorge Masvidal has no takedown defense. Jorge Masvidal he's a puncher. That's what he is. He's a puncher. He's not going to put together an amazing jab kick combo. He's not going to put together really a great 1-2 combo because all of his punches are real looping and have lots of power. I love watching Jorge Masvidal fight other mid fighters because that's who he should be fighting.
Mm-hmm.
Jorge Masvidal is here because of a knee that happened to Ben Askren years ago, because the UFC was justifying and still justifying one of the worst transactions they've ever made. Show was smoking crack. Yeah, man. Crack laced mushrooms are bad for you. They gotta be bad for you. The UFC is still trying to justify one of the worst transactions they've ever made, which was trading Demetrius Johnson for Ben Askren.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Jorge Masvidal's here still. That's why he got title fights. That's why he was in the top 5. That's why he's here fighting Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns is a world-class fighter. Gilbert Burns is, if Usman wasn't there, I know I'm going to sound like Dana White right here, but if Usman, not with Colby Covington, if Usman wasn't there, Burns probably would have been champ.
Yeah.
Not long term, but he probably would have been champ because in my opinion, he's better than Colby. I think he could beat Leon. I don't know if he's better than Leon, but I do think he can beat Leon. I think he can beat most of the guys at the top. He certainly can beat Bilal Muhammad. Gilbert Burns is a stud, and the hate that he gets is absolutely disgusting. He's going to put on a clinic and make everybody remember who he is. I mean, I've never seen anyone, Monique, and I'll end with this. I've never seen anyone get shit on so much to losing to one of the fastest up and coming fighters in the entire world that we've ever seen in Khamzat Chimaev.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, he lost to Khamzat in one of the best fights I've ever seen in my life. And people are just like, he sucks. He's not that good. It's like, he almost knocked out Khamzat. He's a great fighter, and that's not even his strongest area in the octagon. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu master. And he almost, he has power. Don't get me wrong, and he's turned himself into a good striker. But he almost ended the hype train with Khamzat. Mm-hmm. But people actually are saying that Jorge Masvidal is going to go out there and beat Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns is going to put him on the ground and probably submit him in maybe the second round.
Yeah, I can see that. Mm-hmm. It's just like, how do I put this? I can see this going into submission. Now, good news for you, Alec Carr. If Jorge Masvidal loses this fight, he's thinking about retirement. I don't know if you know this, but you're just you're retiring. Gods, I know you are. You're praying to the freaking gods, the MMA gods, that this actually happens.
He's retiring. That's what that means. He's already. I don't think there's a world where Jorge Masvidal thinks he can honestly beat Gilbert Burns.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's the reason why he's saying all this stuff. And Boxing MMA 365 saying Gilbert is mentally and physically ready. I can definitely see that. I mean, his little afro is growing. He's definitely ready for that.
Cute. Got a cute little afro. Brazilian afro.
Yeah, I can't fault him for that. That's for sure. Okay, guys, we are at the main event of the weekend's evening. It's Easter weekend, my friends. We have a banger of a main event, which is the middleweight title on the line. We have champ Alex Pereira versus former champ Israel Adesanya. Now, before I go into this, Alec, I know you probably know this stat, but pretty much Israel Adesanya has had, I think in the last 4 years, 10 title defenses. So that's pretty impressive, you know? Mm-hmm. So anyways, I wanted to put that out there before we started to talk about this fight. I'm going to get your thoughts first because I have my own definitive opinions when it comes to this fight. You know, it's like kickboxer versus kickboxer, but also a kickboxer, Israel Adesanya, that knows a little bit of, wrestling here and there. So what do you think about this fight? Who do you think's going to win? Do you think we're going to see another rematch? We'll see what happens, right?
Yeah, it's almost the same breakdown as last fight. You hope Izzy really worked on his wrestling, which he said he did. If he did, he wins the fight. That Pereira's got 0 takedown defense. I don't care if he's been training with Glover Teixeira. He just started training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in less than he's been doing it for less than a year. That's not gonna get you up to the point where you need to be an elite takedown defender. It's just not. For people who think that it is, that's just utterly insane. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, as Monique knows, is one of the most complicated, hardest to learn MMA and mixed martial art forms out there. It's very hard to learn. And takedown defense is not easy to learn. It takes more than a year to figure it out. Izzy now you hope he's been training a lot of wrestling, but the same goes for him. The difference is Alex Pereira is atrocious at takedown defense.
Yeah.
So if that happens, Izzy wins the fight and it's a no-brainer. And that's what we said last time. And there's no change in this, really. Izzy was winning the fight last fight. I don't think there's any debate about that. Right?
Yeah.
He was, point-wise, he was winning the fight. He even rocked him. He almost put Pereira out. And that seems to be the case with every Izzy Pereira fight. Izzy seems to be winning in control, and then he gets carried away and he starts opening himself up. And then Pereira connects one of his big rights, and that's the beginning of the end. So
Yeah.
Izzy, in order to win this fight, he has to remain calm and controlled for the entirety of the fight. Not for most of it, not for 99% of it, for all of it. All of it, if he wants to win. If he doesn't do that, he's going to get knocked out again for the fourth time. That's what will happen. And then hopefully Pereira will just retire. We don't have to fucking do this anymore because I'm over it. Because if Pereira steps up in weight class, he's going to get crushed. And if he fights anybody else in the division, it's gonna be just the most boring fight in the world, and he'll just be on the ground for all 5 rounds. So hopefully, I'm actually hoping Pereira wins and just retires. That's what I want. That's my hope. I do think, though, I don't know. I can't go against Pereira because Izzy has shown us, and I've been very vocal of, if you show me that you can't fix your mistakes, then you can't fix your mistakes. And Izzy, this is the 4th time you fought him. You've never been able to control yourself. You always open yourself up and you let your ego take control, and he lands a right, and then that's the beginning of the end, like I said. And I don't see it. I can't say Izzy's going to win this fight, even though he is the better fighter overall. Maybe not the better kickboxer, but he is the better fighter overall. I've seen it 3 times. I've seen what he does. I am hoping that Pereira doesn't win, but I think the same script's going to go out. I think it's going to be the same exact thing.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Like, here's the thing. There's this gut feeling in me that says that Izzy might be able to pull this off. Like you said, if he wins just by points and make this kind of like a boring fight and, takes him down, and kind of wrestles him that way, I feel like, he's going to win this fight. There's a good chance he might win this fight. It's not like one of those, Alex is just going to dominate him. But I think you're right. I think that he's going to let his ego get in the way. He's going to open himself up, and Alex is going to take over. And I just feel like, sometimes, and not always, but sometimes there's always, a fighter that has your number, And sometimes it doesn't happen that way. Sometimes you're going to win against that fighter. I mean, like, look at GSP and what's not Matt Serra. There was another fighter that GSP fought.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to think of it right now, but it's not coming to me. But anyways, even the greatest fighters have moments where they've lost or they've opened themselves up, or maybe the other fighter was just a better suited, to win that matchup. But I think in this case,
wait, Monique. It was Serra. You overthought it and made me think about it. It was Serra.
Oh, I'm thinking of someone else.
Oh, okay.
It's not Serra. It's somebody that he fought a bunch of times, and he lost the championship, won it back, or got the contention for the championship. Anyways, I will look it up later. Point is that there's some fighters that just have your number, and sometimes maybe not. And maybe Izzy will prove that wrong in this fight, but I just don't think so. I think Alex is going to expose him again for just being vulnerable and putting himself in danger, because his ego gets in the way. And I just think that, unless Izzy has learned that lesson, which I don't think he has, then, then he's going to change the course of this fight. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think Alex Pereira is going to have Izzy's number again. And so, it's not like every single fighter goes through this whole thing where there's always this fighter that's always going to have their number. But in this case, I feel like that's the case. And I'm going to jump back in and talk to Alex just real quick about it. Do you think that Alex Pereira has Izzy's number, like Dustin says?
Listen, maybe. I don't think so. I think Izzy's just an egotistical, like I can't say he has his number because he's winning the fight every time. In my opinion, if a fighter has another fighter's number, it means they destroy them. Like they just for some reason beat them. They shouldn't, but they do. They just have the perfect game plan. And Pereira's game plan is just wait until Izzy opens up.
Yeah.
Because that's what's happened, and that's what will. I think that's what will happen again. Because Izzy, that last fight, Izzy was just like he won. I think even scorecards showed he won every round. Like
Yeah.
he was winning. He was doing so well, and then he got backed up against the cage, and he started doing this bullshit that he does when he's trying to be cocky because he thought he had already won the fight, and he didn't. Because Pereira, he hurt Pereira once, and he almost knocked him out. It was Pereira was saved by the bell at one point. Let's not forget that. And then, like Dustin said, we all heard those punches over a screaming crowd. Like, he landed that first right, then he landed a left, then he landed another right. And I know Izzy thinks it was an early stoppage, but man, you were out on your feet, bro. You were out on your feet, bro. You had no idea what was going on. So and if you weren't, you were about to be out. So you should be thanking the ref for ending it. But yeah, I mean, I don't think he has his number. I just think Izzy's maybe, and I can't believe I'm saying this right now, Monique, maybe Izzy's not as high IQ as we thought he was.
That's surprising. That's a bold statement right there.
Because you look at the last Whitaker fight, and Whitaker, you could easily have scored that for Whitaker, and he didn't. You clearly saw that he didn't train for takedowns at all.
Yeah.
And you kind of look at the rest of the division, and our fantastic guest last week, we shared about this division. This division kind of sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Not great. So maybe Izzy's long reign will just age very poorly. You know what I mean? Like maybe he really didn't even beat anyone. Maybe these new guys coming into the middleweight division, like Hazmat, when they finally schedule him a fight, like Triple D, like Bo Nickel, and some of these other guys that the UFC are getting now as middleweights, maybe it will become clear that Izzy just fought really bad fighters.
Yeah.
But then you got Whitaker there, who's an all-time great. So, like, it's just really strange. So maybe he's just not as high IQ as we thought he was.
Yeah, you might be right. So I guess we'll wait and see. I can't wait for this pay-per-view. I'm so excited. There's some really great fights, not only in the main card, but in the prelims. So please make sure to tune in for that. Also, like, comment, subscribe if you're watching us from YouTube. And then we're also on Facebook, Twitter, and then we also have an Instagram, which is pretty cool. So you can find us there, Fights Unwrapped people. That is it for our show this week. Next week, we have... And Alec, I know when Alec does this, he's starting to feel it because he knows what's coming up next week. We have Arnold Allen versus Max Holloway, the fight night that I've been waiting for. Now, the fight night itself doesn't look too great of a card. I'm not going to admit that it is a great card. But you never know. The bout order might change. Hopefully, I'm hoping the UFC kind of comes to their senses and changes the bout order. But we'll see what happens. But thank you so much, Alec Carr, for being on the show. And we'll get, hopefully, Dustin Hunt next week on our show. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I believe it's not next week, but the following week, we're going to have a special guest on. One of my friends, Lynn, is going to be on the show, and we're going to talk about some serious competition and fights for women's MMA. So we're going to, tune in for that, guys, when you're watching us next week and the week after. But thank you so much for watching, guys, and you guys have a happy fight week. We will see you guys